Okay, great. Well, let's dive into it. So who am I? Yeah, thank you, Corey, for the introduction. I'm Ross Hardman. I'm the founder of Kingo AI. We're an enterprise AI software company, and I've been working in the AI field for a little more than 10 years. Some people are surprised when I say that. They're like, AI is not something that just happened this year. But no, it's been around for quite a while, since kind of the 40s and the 50s. And I've helped companies design and implement AI roadmaps and strategies. So today, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive here and talk about what AI is. I think we all have a basic understanding, but it's good to kind of get on the same page, how it works, some of the strengths, some of the limitations. We're going to talk a lot about applications for our organizations. Will AI replace people? The short answer is no, not yet. We still have a little bit. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end, like Corey said. Some interesting stats that I thought kind of highlight why we're here. 91% of hiring managers now are seeking ChatGPT experienced workers, which is kind of crazy, right? That means this is the new, I know Excel, I know PowerPoint. This is the thing you have to have on your resume to show that you can work in an office environment. Now, 66% of hiring managers believe that hiring a ChatGPT experienced worker will give them a competitive edge. Now, this next one was pretty surprising to me, that 85% of American workers say that they've used AI tools to perform tasks in their job. Now, you might be saying, that seems a little bit high. I don't think 85% of our workforce uses AI. But check out this next stat. 69% of American workers say that they're afraid to talk to their manager about their use of AI for fear of being replaced by those same tools that they're using. So we need to have that kind of open conversation, right? All right, so the key here is, of course, that AI is no longer science fiction. It's something that we've seen in books and movies, but it's not something that's coming. It's something that's here today. So we want to talk about it. How can it be used to give us a competitive edge, to help to reduce some of those costs, give more productive employees, more engaged employees, improve customer experience, and even open up new revenue opportunities? So I don't know if we can do a quick show of hands here. Has everyone heard of ChatGPT? Is everyone familiar? Anyone unfamiliar? I'm trying to determine how much of a deep dive I should do into this, basically. So for anyone who may not be super familiar, it's kind of this digital assistant that can read, write, summarize, brainstorm, problem solve. And so I'm sure some of you all know about the applications on a personal level. If you have a kid in school right now, you know that's completely upending the education system. Students are using this to do their homework, to write papers, that kind of thing. It can be used for travel planning and itineraries, recipes, make this 30% tastier, put together a workout plan, that kind of thing. But obviously today we are focused on business applications. So how can it be used for blog posts, for instance? A lot of marketing and sales opportunity with this technology, creating standard operating procedures, proposals, social media posts, product descriptions, but it can also be used for logic as well. So it can help with project management and estimation. Ton of HR applications around resume screening, employee onboarding, personalized training. So we'll get into some of that. But first thing I always love to do is kick off with a short demo. So I am going to share my screen here if I can get the right screen. That's always the challenge. All right. So you should see ChatGPT come up in a moment. And just let me know if that doesn't come up. But for anyone who may not be super familiar, this is ChatGPT. It's kind of like texting an AI, texting a robot. It's an interactive conversation, right? And there we go. So it's an interactive conversation. So we are going to start with this text box at the bottom. This is kind of where you enter your prompt. So this is your question or your instruction. What do you want the AI to do? Now, I'm curious, does anyone here have the pro version? I think Corey kind of asked that, but if you don't, I highly recommend it. And by the end of this, I'm going to try to convince you that the pro version is totally worth it. But one of the things that you get is access to GPT-4. You'll see this kind of toggle at the top. Now, GPT-4 is just the more sophisticated version of 3.5. It's just all around better. It's like working with someone with 30 more IQ points. So GPT-4 is just more creative, more strategic, more analytical, all the things that we want in an AI. So let's do a quick example here. Let's say you're writing a blog post for a company in the manufacturing and distribution industry. The blog post is called Costing Methods in Manufacturing, a technical comparison of activity-based costing and traditional costing. So outline this blog post and provide specific examples and comprehensive detail. Now, I would love to say that I wrote that post or that prompt, but of course, you know that I use GPT-4 to help me write that prompt. So one thing I want to get across is that it's not cheating to use AI. It's perfectly fine. I know some people feel like they're cheating when they use AI, but this is kind of our new reality. So first thing you'll notice is that I asked for an outline of the blog post and not the actual blog post. And one of the reasons for that is that AI thinks a little bit differently than we do. It doesn't think and then write, it kind of thinks on the page, or it thinks as it writes. So that's what we're seeing here now. And we'll go into a little bit about how it technically works. But we can take this outline, and I'd love for you all to just take a look at this. Let me know if this seems wrong or if it seems correct. My, the cool thing is ChatGPT knows about your industry, and it likely knows about your individual company as well, if your company was online and relatively known as of September 2021. And we'll talk about why that date is relevant. So we're going to say, use this blog post or use this outline to write the blog post. Now, I typically will write in a particular style. So write in the style of, let's say, the other day I got somebody suggesting Batman, I got a Michael Scott, got a pirate, got a caveman. Do we have any suggestions of what people would like to see?
One that I saw that was pretty funny was Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay. I love it. Let's see what we get here. Good suggestion. All right. So, oh yeah, brother. Okay. It's brilliant. Now, while this is likely not particularly applicable to your brand voice, the key here is to show that one, that it can follow instructions, right? You can follow up if you don't like what it writes. You can tell it to rewrite it. You can tell it to expand on a certain section, take out a certain section. And additionally, if you do want it to write in your brand voice, you can use a process called fine tuning, where you can feed it, let's say, 100 of your blog posts, for instance, and it will learn your writing style essentially, and it'll be able to write that way. And I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to write an email using ChatGPT, but sometimes it can feel a little robotic, a little stale. But you can feed it in 100 of your emails and it will learn your writing style. So that is pretty cool. It's honestly amazing. So a few things you can do, you can fine tune it, but then you can also tell it in here, I want you to write more, formally, informally, conversationally, be more empathetic, anything like that. Oh yeah, dig it. All right, Corey, that was a great suggestion. So I'm going to switch back to our PowerPoint here. Let's see, there we go. Should come up in a moment. Let me know if it doesn't. But zooming back here, what is AI? So I think we've all got a basic understanding, but again, it's good to get on the same page. So AI is essentially getting computers or machines to accomplish tasks that would normally require human level intelligence. But that is a massive umbrella, right? Huge definition there. And that includes things like robotics and computer vision and data science, machine learning. We're not interested in all of that. Today, we're interested in what's called generative AI. So generative AI is the ability to create human-like content. So I say human-like content and not text because it can also create images, video, and audio. And let's look at a sample. Take a look at these images, particularly the one on the far left. So see these humans here? They are completely fake, totally synthetic, made by AI. So this is using a model called Midjourney, and for $10 a month, you all can have access to Midjourney as well. And as part of that, you can create fictionalized images, essentially. It's pretty amazing. Now, just a quick legal note here that the output of AI cannot be copyrighted, which means if you put this on your website and someone knows it's AI generated, they can just take it down and use it. Nothing you can do about it. But if you put up AI generated images on your website, no one's going to come after you. So it's kind of pros and cons there. Now, this is just to give you an idea of the progress of this technology. Take a look at this. February 2022 with version 1 here. This is when Midjourney first came out. Version 4 of Midjourney, that's November, so that's when ChatGPT came out. And then just a couple months ago in May, 5.1 came out. They actually recently released 5.2 as well, which I need to add to this slide. Just the progress you can see is exponential. And this is occurring not just in images, but also in video and audio and text. So today I am going to focus on large language models. Why am I focusing on that? Because essentially when we teach AI language, we give it the ability to understand our world, to refer to physical things and to abstract ideas. That's how we use logic and reasoning. And when we teach AI language, we essentially give it the ability to use logic and reasoning to understand our language, to generate human-like text. So how are these language models trained? This is the most technical and most nerdy that this is going to get, but it's important for us to understand this so that we understand the strengths and the weaknesses. Now, what you essentially do is you gather all the data that you can, typically as much of the internet as you can, from a particular date, right? In the case of ChatGPT, that's September 2021. And you feed it into the language model and you say, hey, AI, can you help me find the patterns in these words? Or in other words, which words follow which other words? So if you were to say, hi, how are you? And then there was a blank word there, then you might fill that in with today or feeling or doing it. Hi, how are you doing? Hi, how are you today? Hi, how are you feeling? These are frequent words that most statistically appear in that kind of sequence of words. So we're just getting the AI to predict the next word. Now, in a strange way, that's all these models are. They're next token predictors. They give us the ability to predict the next word. And so you can kind of think of them as a fancy autocomplete machine, right? Which is kind of amazing that that's essentially all that it is, but it's true. It's just predicting the next word. So uh, we can go into this a little bit toward the end in the Q&A, but I typically like to ask folks, have you thought about how this can apply to your business today? Because that's one thing I want you to keep in the back of your mind is how can I apply this to my business today? What are the practical applications kind of as we go through this? Now, if there's one thing I could say that we could take away from this, where you're going to get the most benefit, it's likely in problem solving. So we come across problems all day long, right? We've got problems that are small, problems that are large, and we can use the AI to essentially help us brainstorm and solve these problems. So let's look at a quick example of that. I'm going to switch our screen back. Okay, we should see ChatGPT in a moment. Now we're going to start a new conversation. Something else I do want to note is when you get the Pro version, you can go into your settings and turn off training. And that's really important because that allows you to make it so you can share confidential and proprietary information. If you don't have training turned off, or in other words, your training is turned on, and it's always turned on for the free version, then that means any proprietary or confidential information you put in this text box at the bottom, that can be used by OpenAI to train their future models. So if you want to protect your information, you need to get the paid version. You need to turn off training. Another quick note on here is knowing what to put into this box to get it to answer your question appropriately is called prompt engineering. So if you want to learn how do you speak to the AI to get the most out of it, you look up prompt engineering. A good website is learnprompting.org. And this website will walk you through kind of how do I speak to AI from a beginning, intermediate, advanced level. And that can be a great place to start. So right now we're going to go through just a very brief problem solving process here, and it's not indicative of the true process, but I'll say I own a company in the manufacturing and distribution industry, and I need to optimize inventory levels to minimize holding costs without risking stockouts. Are there any books that might help me? And if so, what are the top takeaways from those books? Give me a list in a markdown table, rate each takeaway, and provide reason. So let's go through this and see what we get. Now, the one thing I want us to keep in mind here is that when we start a new conversation with AI, it's like bringing someone in off the street. So they don't know anything about our business, the problem that we're trying to solve, anything that we've done so far to solve it or haven't done. And so the more context we provide, typically the better result we're going to get. Right, so that's pretty key. You always want to provide more and more information. That's where you get the good stuff. But you want to make sure that you've essentially turned off training so that that confidential proprietary information is protected, and you can only do that in the paid version, or you can go over the OpenAI API. And so the other thing I want to note here quickly is that when you ask general questions, you tend to get general answers. And the real gold of a conversation with AI doesn't come until about 5 or 6 messages or questions into the conversation. So the more you ask and the more you kind of follow up on what it's saying, the more value you're going to get out of this. But I hope everyone can see this. I think this is pretty amazing, right? I'm sure if you're anything like me, you have a bunch of books that you would love to read, but just don't have the time, right? You can find books, for instance, that are applicable to the particular problem that you're facing and get a summary or extract the key insights or principles. And if we wanted to take this and just follow up at any point and say, I want to learn more about lean principles. Can you help me dive into that and how we might apply that to my particular business? Or we could dive into the Kaizen way or utilizing technologies and analytics, anything. We just follow up with the AI and ask deeper and deeper questions. That's where we tend to get the most value out of the AI. Okay, so sticking with kind of use cases here, I want to show another quick example. And what I did is I went to GPT-4 and I had it create a contract. And as part of that contract, I told it to make it so that one party could take advantage of the other party, or in other words, to introduce loopholes into here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put in that kind of section of the contract, and we're going to ask the AI to analyze it. So we're going to say, read each section, consider whether either party could take advantage of the terms in the section, explain any potential loopholes of each section in detail, and be comprehensive, and let's think step by step. So let's run this. And one of the things I want to note off the bat is you can see that this is not, it's relatively short, right? It's not indicative of the true length of a contract. And so if we wanted to put in a full contract, a quick note here is that I want to say ChatGPT has what's called a token context limit of 8,000 tokens. A token is roughly 3/4 of a word, which means you can only fit in 6,000 words in a conversation between your questions and your answers, which means if your text goes beyond 6,000 words, the AI can forget what happened at the beginning of the conversation, which really becomes a problem, right? And so what you want to do at that point is you can use a model that allows you to put in longer text. So Claude, for instance, allows you to do that. Now, one of the words of caution here is that Claude likely does train on your data. They haven't been very clear about whether they do, and so I would assume that they do. But you can put in 75,000 words in a conversation, which means you can upload an entire legal contract, for instance, or your customer tickets. And you can say, hey, why are people frustrated? Why are they confused? How can we improve our product or service, right? Things like that. So one thing I want to call out here, let's go. So you can see that it's going through each section and it's talking about areas where there are issues. So an unusual aspect of the term and termination, no renewal clause is present. I mean, there's no mechanism for extending the contract beyond 1 year. It's going through each of these and saying, here are our loopholes. Here's where one party could take advantage of the other. So, I was working with a company the other day who was saying, I wish we had this a few months earlier because we missed something in a contract. Our lawyers missed it as well, and now we are paying for it. And I guarantee you they're paying more than the $20 a month that ChatGPT costs, right? So let's run through another example here. Has anyone ever received a long-winded email? I know I certainly have. So let's run through here. I told ChatGPT to create a verbose email, and as part of this, I told it to put in action items that would be hard for someone to pick up on. So now we're going to say, I want you to analyze the following email, summarize it, and provide a list of any action items that need to be taken, and then use bullet points. So let's see what we get. Now, the summary that we get back here, you may notice that it's probably going to be pretty verbose. And one of the reasons for that is that in my custom instructions, I tell it to be verbose and to have long answers. So I say prefer long responses at an undergraduate level. Assume the user doesn't have a deep technical knowledge, but that they have basic understanding. Through your custom instructions, you can tell the AI how you want it to respond to you. And so what that allows you to do is you can say, be verbose or be brief, be concise, give me the executive summary, right? So anything you put into there, it can, you can essentially steer it as to how you want it to respond to you. So we've got this, but let's say we want it to be even shorter, and you'll see it got our action items there. We could say, use this, or rather, now summarize this in 100 words, and then write a haiku, right? Because why not? Because it can. So let's run through this. And so if the summary is too long at the first go, remember that this is a back and forth conversation, so we can go back and say, hey, summarize this even more. And there's our haiku. Kind of fun. Okay, so now I'm going to transition back to our presentation here. Should see that in a moment. So we looked at analyzing documents, legal contracts, but it can analyze essentially any document for whatever information you want. You will want to learn a bit about prompt engineering. And then an important point about this technology is that it is a first draft machine. So it is something that can do an initial review of your contracts, for instance, but you still need to send it to your lawyers. You still need to review it yourselves. It's not able to capture everything. It is not yet as intelligent as a human. Now, looking through this, what are some other areas where this excels? Well, summarization, we looked at that, but it can apply to more than just emails, right? It can apply additionally to research papers, scientific papers, anything that's technical, any industry news, anything that's too long for you to want to read. And again, if you're summarizing emails or something, make sure that you have turned off training and that you have the pro version so that your data is not being used. And then content creation, this is generative AI, right? So it is able to help us generate content such as reports. It can be used to help us create proposals, marketing content, sales content. And if anyone has any questions about that, we can go over that. But if you have any proprietary documents, it can be used to essentially, you can fine tune a model to create those proprietary documents as well. Now, there's a ton of other stuff that this technology can do, but I'm not going to go into all of this in detail. I will say briefly, with text simplification, you can put in a legal contract and say, hey, I'm not a lawyer. Can you explain this to me? Or if you have somebody's code or somebody's highly technical documents, you put it into here and say, I don't know what I'm doing. Tell me what this means, right? I do that all the time. Explain to me like I'm 5. Great prompt. So if you do have a ticketing system, Zendesk, HubSpot, something else, or if you just do your client communication through email, you can use a classification system and set it up so that it essentially looks at each ticket and says, okay, is this person frustrated? Are they confused? Are they angry? Are they happy even? We can send this to different technicians and or to different email addresses. Now, so you can categorize by sentiment, but you can also categorize by the client or the service or the product that the person's asking about. Now, we're going to look at this, hopefully, if we have enough time, but there's also the ability to do anomaly detection, trend analysis, and pattern detection. This is huge. This is where the AI can take in your inventory information or whether, maintenance information to try to determine whether there will be a maintenance failure. And it can project into the future based on your data. So we've talked a lot about the amazing things that AI can do, right? Incredibly helpful. But there are some limitations, and we want to start talking about those. So remember I was saying that AI is essentially this autocomplete machine. It's a thing where we put in a legal contract, for instance, and it would just kind of continue writing that contract in its base version. But that's not how we want to deal with it. We want to be able to ask questions, follow instructions, have it answer those questions, and follow those instructions. So OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, they use a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF. And what that does is it trains the AI to want to please us. So that's great, right? But what happens when you ask a question that the AI doesn't know the answer to? Well, this is where the AI can do a thing called hallucinating. So it's probably exactly what you think it is. Hallucinating is where the AI makes something up. And as I'm sure you know, it comes off as incredibly confident. It seems like it knows the answer to every single question that you give. And this is where we have to be particularly careful because we need humans to validate the output of AI. So I'm going to show you a quick example. There was a lawyer, and you may have heard about this, a lawyer in New York, trained lawyer, 25 plus years. He knows what he's doing. He was suing a Colombian airline called Avianca. And as part of his lawsuit, he needed some case law. So he went to ChatGPT, and I guarantee it was a free version. And he said, hey, ChatGPT, can you give me a list of cases that I can put into my filing that would be relevant to my case? And ChatGPT said, yeah, no problem. Here's that list of cases. There's just one problem with this list of cases, and I don't know if anyone can guess what it is, but it's that they're all completely fake, right? That's crazy. But take a look at the names of these cases. They've got the names of foreign airlines in here. They've got dates. There's case numbers. There's circuit courts, appellate courts. To a trained lawyer of 25 plus years, this looks 100% correct. And I've asked a few other lawyers as well. This is the correct format. So the AI didn't know how to answer this, but it still gave an answer, right? That's not great. This is called hallucination. So we can't trust the AI to produce factual, accurate information. It's not a search engine. It's a thinking machine. And so we still need to use search engines to validate any factual information that we want to get out of an AI. So what should the lawyer have done? He should have, he should have taken one of these from the output of ChatGPT, and he should have pasted it into Google and should have checked out, does it actually exist, right? And there's another thing that he could have done as well. And he could have started with a search engine instead of validating with a search engine afterwards. You could start with a search engine. And I'm going to show you a website called Perplexity AI. It looks like there we go. This is an incredibly valuable tool that I would check out. It is free. It is a search engine that uses language models. So if we were to say, give me a list of lawsuits involving airlines, and then we would search for this. It's an AI first search engine. So what that means is that it's going to give us a list of cases, or it's going to give us the answer first, right? And then it's going to cite its sources. So that means that we still need to check the sources and make sure that they're applicable. But you can see at the end here, it's providing citations, it's giving footnotes for its answer. A lot better than something like Google that just gives you 10 to 15 links and says, your answer is somewhere in here, good luck, right? So that's a pretty cool resource for if you do need to validate your information or you do need to use a search engine, which again, the AI models are not search engines, they're thinking tools. So there's a very important distinction there. Now, a couple of other limitations, and that's that there's a knowledge cutoff date. We talked about this during training, but ChatGPT only knows information up to September 2021. Claude has information up to July 2023, and Bard's what's called always online, so it has always the most relevant information. Why do I not recommend Bard straight off the bat for everyone? Because it hallucinates more than any of the other models. So if Bard's hallucinating, let's say 10% of the time, the trouble is you don't know which 10%, right? So that's really a problem. ChatGPT has the most limited hallucinations. September 2021 just means if you ask any information after that date, it's not going to know what it is, but you can feed in new information as part of your prompt to kind of teach it and bring it up to date. Okay, so how do you mitigate these risks? Well, one, you verify the AI generated information, right? Especially if you're taking actions or decisions based on it, you make sure that it is accurate. And then you're just aware that the AI can produce inaccurate, biased, false information. Okay, so looking at a few applications, and I'll look at another use case here at the end with a spreadsheet that I'm pretty excited to show you. But looking at some applications here, oops, let me move this over here. So real-time process monitoring, right? The AI could identify inefficiencies and recommend immediate adjustments to your process, to your workflow, to what's going on in real time. Now, some of these things are things that the technology can do technically, but it's not yet commercially available. So if we want to talk about, how that's possible to do, that's kind of a deeper conversation. But technically, the AI has the possibility of doing this. Additionally, predicting when maintenance is necessary, right? So predicting machinery maintenance, which minimizes downtime, and I'm going to show you an example of that. For supply chain, let's see. So dynamic supply chain optimization, you can imagine it's doing real-time adjustments for sourcing strategies based on vendor performance. Again, you need data from the past that can be used to inform how it's going to handle that and put together its models. But it can also work with inventory management, forecasting inventory needs. Again, having it create its own models is kind of the key here. Now, I know a couple of folks were interested in sales and marketing. You can imagine, of course, well, first of all, I should say this is generative AI, right? So it can generate most of your sales and marketing material, or at least as a first draft, right? Maybe 70 to 80% of the way there, and then you can refine it and edit it. And the more context you provide in your prompts, the better results you're going to get. I'm sure most folks here have a CRM of some kind. So what you can do is you can tie the AI into your CRM. And as part of that, you can feed in your tickets, and it can extract insights or patterns from your clients and from the different tickets that you've opened. The other thing is personalization here. So let's say you're sending out a newsletter, for instance, to your clients. Instead of sending out one newsletter to 5,000 people, what if you could target that newsletter to each individual client based on the notes you have on them in your CRM? And then you can also imagine the AI going out and doing market research, essentially, right? So we can stay on top of what's the latest news in our industry, what do I kind of have to know, what are competitors doing, where are they expanding, what is the clientele, or how are client behavior changing? That's information that the AI could technically gather. Now, continuing on sales and marketing, again, we talked about this, but personalized marketing campaigns, the AI can create targeted campaigns based on customer purchasing trends. It's a great ideation tool as well. So if you need to get more ideas about creating content, it never runs out of ideas, right? So then again, going back to that concept of the more data you have, the more you can feed into it. You can feed in your sales performance information, and it can help you put together an analysis or do strategic planning based on that data. And then a ton of other areas where it's applicable. On the legal side, we looked a little bit at contract analysis, but it can also draft boilerplate legal. Again, you have to send it to the lawyers, right? But it can draft that, maybe save you a couple billable hours. And it can even refine a legal contract or a boilerplate template that you might have and say, how do we make it applicable for this client, for instance? Now, on the HR side, you can imagine taking your client, or excuse me, all the resumes you've received and putting them into an AI and saying, can you help me determine which candidates might be best suited for this position, for instance? Now, that's pretty key, but it can also help with drafting job descriptions, for instance. I don't know if anyone's tried that, but it's a great use case. It's pretty good at that. Now, I do want to offer a word of caution here. New York passed a law recently that said if you do want to use AI in your hiring process, you do have to disclose that, and you have to undergo audits for bias. So you want to check your applicable laws where that's concerned. But the AI can also be used for getting employee feedback and just kind of gathering information, doing surveys, all of that. A lot of HR applications. And then, of course, one of the low-hanging fruits as well is customer service. So AI can be used to answer customer service queries 24/7 and to provide that first line of response, essentially. And when it doesn't know the answer to a question, it can raise that flag, alert a human, where the human can answer that question, and then the answer to that goes into your AI system, essentially, and it will be able to handle that from each day forward. So now a quick demo that I want to show you. One of my favorite parts of this, honestly. I'm going to switch back to ChatGPT, and we are going to look at a quick demo of how it can deal with spreadsheets. So you'll go into GPT-4, you'll come down here, select code interpreter, you'll see this plus button, and then you can upload documents. So I'm going to explain what's in this document, but first I want to say, use this document to perform an exploratory data analysis, and I'm going to say use charts and graphs. Okay, so what's in this document? This document is a list of machine readings of, torque and heat and that kind of thing, along with any failure that has occurred along with that machine. So it's essentially a spreadsheet of data about machinery and when it has failed, if it has. Okay. So what it's going to do now, what Code Interpreter does, is it allows you to upload documents, and as part of that, it allows you to, one, analyze those documents, but also, two, manipulate those documents. So the cool thing about Code Interpreter, and the name is terrible, it kind of throws us off here, is that you don't have to know how to code, it codes. So it is creating code in Python here, and it is reading a CSV, so which is just a spreadsheet, so it's taking in that file, and it is now reading the contents of that file. You can see each of these columns. These column descriptions are not in this actual spreadsheet, so it's inferring those based on the usage. It's got air temperature, process temperature, torque, tool wear, the kind of information that you would want to know if you were trying to predict whether there's going to be a maintenance failure. So you can see coming in here, it's trying to check, do we have any missing values in this spreadsheet? And next, what it's going to do is it's going to understand the distribution of individual variables, right? So you can open this up and you can see it's writing more code and trying to understand that. And what it's going to do now is it's going to plot a histogram of this data. So the key thing I just want to show you here is that it can also create charts and graphs. Take a look at that. That is from our data that we uploaded. So we can begin to understand this, and it can create charts in whatever form we want, right? So we can say, hey, I don't like this, I want you to change this, or use some other chart that's more interesting or that's more easily readable. You can tell it to export this as a downloadable image file, or to put this onto a PowerPoint and give me a download of the PowerPoint. And then what I can do next is I can say, use this, or rather, use this data to help us create a predictive model, which will help us determine whether there will be a maintenance failure. Now, just due to time, unfortunately, I don't think we have time to get it to create this model. I've done it before. It can create a model that has up to 99.9% accuracy in determining whether there will be a maintenance failure based on the training data that it's put in. So if you don't have a data scientist on your team, you now have a data scientist intern, right? And just like any intern, it's something where it can save us some time, but we still need to check the results. We still need to verify the answers because it may be wrong. All right, so this is one of my favorite parts, but we still have a couple of things to get to, so I'm going to cut back here. And hopefully it'll let me share again. Okay, looks like it is. So talking about some implications here, right? We've got this AI. It can be used to perform kind of menial, repetitive tasks. So what does that mean? That means that we are going to see a massive boost in productivity across the board, which is great, right? But it's not as easy as just saying, here's ChatGPT, good luck, you're going to be 30% more effective now. There needs to be training of the workforce. So there needs to be a reskilling and upskilling to say, what is AI? What are its strengths? What are its weaknesses? What are hallucinations? How do I guard against hallucinations? What is prompt engineering? How do I learn to speak to the AI in the proper way to get the most out of it, right? That's all key. There's this phrase that you may have heard, AI will not replace you, but a person using AI will. And this is key. This applies not just to individuals, but also to businesses. You can imagine a business that has more engaged employees, more productive employees, has more revenue opportunities, has a better customer experience because of their use of AI. They're going to leapfrog a company that's not using AI. So one of the keys here, though, is that we still need humans in the loop. This does not replace humans. We need domain experts to guard against hallucinations, right? We need people to verify the output of AI. So I do work with companies to help them become, AI-ready organizations, essentially. And part of that is developing an AI roadmap and strategy. And as part of that, we kind of look at, okay, what are the roles and the tasks that can most benefit from AI? What tools could be used to accomplish those roles or those tasks? And then can we put that in place via a pilot program, for instance, and then assess the ROI potential of using AI for you quantitatively? Does one team have more productivity than a team? Does an AI team have more productivity than a team with no AI? It should. And then qualitatively, do people enjoy their job more when they use AI? They should, because they don't have to do the remedial, repetitive tasks. They're freed up to do more engaging, more creative tasks. And again, we talked about needing to upskill the organization's workforce, talk about prompt engineering. How does it work? And then, this is a changing industry, so you do want to stay on top of everything, introduce the latest technology as it comes, and make sure you're staying on top of the newest models. So I want to get to briefly data security and privacy. This is huge. Why are we all concerned around data security and privacy? Obviously, because AI increases the value of your data. You saw I just uploaded that information about maintenance failures. We may have had that for the last 10 to 20 years, but we couldn't actually make sense of it because we didn't have a data scientist team, right? Or a machine learning team. But now we can with this technology. And so that means you want to aggregate as much data as you can, save as much as you can, and prevent others from gaining access to your data. That's why we want to have the pro version of ChatGPT, but turn off training. Now, who has access to your data? You want to answer these questions. What are the touch points? Which vendors? Which software? You want to put together an AI use policy. And as part of this, separate your data into 3 buckets. What's kind of your sensitive HIPAA level compliant information, your proprietary and confidential information, and your low risk information. And you can use different tools or different processes for each of those different buckets of data. Now, the first thing that I recommend companies do is put together an AI use policy. So answer some of these questions. Which AI tools will have access to your data? Which employees will be putting what data into those tools? What data will be stored on your servers versus their servers, right? Who owns that data? What's the policy around data use? Can they use your data to train their models? These are all important questions to ask in this new AI age. And one of the central principles here is the more data you collect, the better, right? That is just a key thing. It's pretty much dirt cheap to store it, so you want to make sure you do that. Then when we're talking about maximizing security and functionality, you want to deploy an AI model onto your intranet so that no data is leaving your network. There's no concern around training your data. There's no concerns around sharing proprietary and confidential information. And this is, building a company's brain. This is something that I work on, kind of training AI models for a company's data and unlocking data retrieval, allowing AI to perform tasks and unlocking new insights. This, I think, is going to be the major competitive advantage over the next decade. So I've kind of given you a fire hose of information, and I know time always goes faster than I think it should. So I'm going to go through a quick checklist here of the actionable things you can do today to get started. And the first thing is develop that AI use policy, right? Make sure that you know who's using your data, what tools are using your data, where's it stored, which employees have access to it. Make sure you're aggregating, but preventing others from using it, right? You can use GPT-4 to help draft an initial version of the AI use policy, and then obviously refine and edit it, and then still send it to your lawyers. And then get everyone a ChatGPT Plus account. I do recommend this, or at least everyone that you think is most valuable on the team. Obviously, after that AI use policy has been put in place. And as part of that, turn on privacy mode, turn off training, and then enable 2-factor authentication. The security is obviously incredibly important here. And then also set ChatGPT as your homepage, or as everyone's homepage. Why do I recommend this? Well, if there's one reason why I would say that this would fail in your organization, it's not because you haven't technologically put everything in place. It's not even because you haven't done the proper training. It's because using AI is a behavior, it's a habit change. And so you have to remind people over and over that, hey, you can use AI to draft this email or to draft this document and then edit it afterwards, right? So we can save time by remembering that we can use ChatGPT, for instance. Some companies are appointing an AI officer. This isn't necessary, of course, as a full role, but it can be helpful to just have someone who's going to champion AI in your organization. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is this is incredibly important to your long-term success, right? But the problem is that sometimes it doesn't feel hair on fire urgent. And so you want to make sure that you're not dropping it in 3 weeks or 3 months. You want to make sure that it stays on your roadmap and that you are implementing it as part of your long-term competitive advantage. And then run that pilot program, find if there's going to be a quantitative, qualitative improvement, make sure that ROI is there. Then set up an AI Teams or Slack channel. I definitely recommend this. One, so that folks can share where AI is working well for them. They can share success stories, but also failure stories and kind of compare where does it not work and where might we be able to improve. And then create that prompt library. So I've showed you prompts for summarizing your content, analyzing legal documents. You want to make sure that you save those things. That becomes part of your competitive advantage. So just be thinking about what's the one thing you can do to take a step toward AI. I think that's the huge question we have to ask ourselves today. And where can we practically apply this? Yeah.
Hey, Mike, with the few minutes that we have left, do you mind kind of talking to the audience about our vision and how this could be applicable to Rover?
I would be happy to. Yes, absolutely. So we see AI introducing or integrating into Rover through the Rover Web suite of products, Rover Business Suite. Rover AI is a chatbot assistant plugged into that environment. So once integrated and once you've unlocked that level of access, having that assistant available to you through the Rover interface. And we see that as helpful for a number of different reasons, but main thing is I think each of you deal with this in your businesses where you do have a number of different vendors for different technologies, and we're your vendor for the ERP side, but maybe you're looking at other vendors for other outlying things. And so there's an opportunity to consolidate things and keep things simple there. To the same extent that Ross was saying, look, if you're going to use Chat GPT at the organization, make it people's default homepage so you can really just encourage and reinforce adoption. And in that same way, if you're going to have users inside of the ERP to have the AI available to them through the ERP, it makes an awful lot of sense. It's one less hoop they have to jump through to get to interacting with that system, right? So you're putting more power at their fingertips. Everything underneath the sun on the ERP side to us then becomes available to that. So you could look at things for your accounting and operations team and say, hey, here's a way to have the AI assistant go pull customers out of the system that are 90 plus days delinquent and automatically write up some payment reminder notices and then even send them out, right? Things like that are kind of instructional reactive things that normally today, right now, you have staff executing on. It could be the same with purchase orders, right? Taking a peek at inventory information, looking at projections and saying, okay, prepare these purchase orders for me. It could be the same, from the sales side, draft some letters and some quotes to correspond with it to customers running on certain products that you need to explain some price increases to or things like that. But generally in that first stage of it, we see them as kind of reactive and instructional opportunities to level things up. That you can really look at, and we would love to hear from you, right, as you look at the organization and kind of the areas of the business where you have a lot of, resources acting based off of instruction, maybe direct instruction or kind of learned, hey, this is just the procedure, so follow the procedure every day kind of a thing. Huge area there. Second area, which I think is a little more future state still, but proactive ways where it's less about a manager asking something of an employee, but more of an employee as part of their job doing some things and bringing that back to their manager. And so a ton of examples we could get into there. But some of the more exciting, I think, are even ways where it's like, now you have AI looking beyond the veil of the ERP too, right? From a sales perspective, it might be AI going and looking at, based off of everything I know, here's our current customer list. Let me go do some market research on additional potential sales leads, right? Hey, these companies seem similar to the customers that we have, so I'm going to bring that information into you. And that's the AI in this space kind of reaching outside of the data that's coming from the ERP to draw down information from elsewhere. And again, a number of examples we could run through here where you've got people in your organizations today who are maybe working with information that extends outside of the system, and you can get into some proactive kind of flows of information and action back in the system. I think Corey's in chat here, prompting a couple of things, but so that's where we see things going from the product perspective. shading our own opinion on it, as we're working through our own workflows with Rover, how can we use AI to level all of that up, as well as thinking about and hearing from you, and that's really where we want to hear from this audience, for your businesses today, as you think through some of those scenarios, what opportunities do you see for AI to really help you level up the business, right? And maybe break through some areas where you're feeling some friction with resources or processes or whatever the case may be. That's the fact finding there is really interesting to us.
All right, everybody, you've got our contact information. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out anytime.
Thank you, guys.
All right, everybody, thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye now.